Hello everyone, my name is Angshuman Choudhury and I am from India. I work on India-Myanmar relations, among other things. Thank you for inviting me to speak in this important press conference on the new conscription law in Myanmar. Before I give my remarks, I just want to extend my support and solidarity to the revolution in Myanmar and really hope that things get better and everyone who's had to flee Myanmar, which is their home, are able to return to their country and return to their homes very soon. So that is my earnest hope. As far as the consequences of this law, which really makes a very dire situation worse, driving up so much anxiety, fear, and desperation across Myanmar, especially among its young people. I think the spillover effects of this law on India would be quite serious in my view, which is that India has been seeing refugees from Western Myanmar, particularly Chin state and Sagaing region to a lesser extent, trickle into India, flee into India after the February 2021 coup. And that is something that has concerned New Delhi. In fact, New Delhi looks at this issue as a refugee issue, less as a humanitarian issue and more as a security issue or a national security issue. However, for example, there are differences in this or nuances in this, which is that, for example, the state of Mizoram has been very, very supportive of refugees. It has proactively stepped in to create this de facto asylum regime for the refugees, which includes a wide range of civil society organizations, local student organizations, village level committees, etc. But the rising refugee numbers are also sort of creating a pressure on Mizoram's political and financial sort of systems, and also health and education systems, because Mizoram is a small, in many ways, cash-strapped state also, right? So so what this conscription law is would most likely do is lead to a dramatic spike or rise in refugee numbers from Myanmar to India. Now, of course, we've seen that people have lined up in front of the Thai embassy in Yangon to go to Thailand, and refugee numbers from Myanmar to Thailand have always been bigger overall compared to refugee numbers from Myanmar to India, even in the past after the 1988 movement. But nonetheless, people have been fleeing brutal SSE attacks from Sagaing and Chin state into Mizoram mostly, but to a lesser extent Manipur. Now, as you know, there's an intense ethnic conflict going on in Manipur at the moment, and a lot of that conflict is framed around the issue of how the dominant Meitei community perceives the many of the Kuki-Zo and Chin asylum seekers from Sagaing region as how they perceive them as illegal immigrants or interlopers or drug cultivators, etc. from Myanmar. So that is also something that New Delhi is very much concerned about, that whole situation. In fact, last year, the federal government in Delhi also linked the Manipur ethnic conflict with the refugee crisis, the Myanmar refugee crisis. So you see, this whole issue is looked at from a very securitized point of view. So in that sense, even assuming India's security interests or strategic interests, this conscription law and the refugee crisis, the heightened refugee crisis movement or the distress movement that it's going to trigger across the border is not in India's interests at all. It's going to mount pressure on Mizoram. Probably it's also going to force people from Sagaing to flee into Manipur, which would then further muddle up the conflict discourse around the conflict there. So it is in India's interests. My point is this: it is in India's interests to vocally and very categorically oppose the SEC's conscription law. And even beyond that, I think it is in India's interests, and something that I've been writing since the last 3 years almost, that it is in Indian interests to oppose the SEC rule in Myanmar, because the SEC is not able to provide the kind of political stability and economic predictability that is needed for India to maintain a constructive presence, a people-centric presence in Myanmar. This includes, the connectivity projects that India has planned, the commercial investments, and many of the sort of, I would say, socially meaningful or people-centric projects like health clinics, vocational training centers, small schools, etc. And many of the schools and health clinics are actually located along the India-Myanmar border regions in Sagaing. What I've always argued is that the SSC won't be able to provide that kind of environment for India to engage meaningfully with Myanmar, with the people of Myanmar. Hence, it is high time India realizes the new reality on the ground in Myanmar, that a new script has been written, especially by a new set of actors, including the young people of Myanmar. And India needs to recognize the new script and act accordingly, which in this case would mean opening formal channels of communication with the NUG and other pro-democracy forces, and engaging with them on equal terms, in serious terms, and not just having casual, informal level contacts. The SSC is doing everything beyond the conscription law. The SSC is doing everything to ensure that India's security and political interests are not honored. As I said, beyond the conscription law also, the SSC's brutal violence along the India-Myanmar border regions, be it in Sagaing or Chin, in the form of airstrikes, relentless airstrikes, artillery bombing, and widespread arson in villages, has been triggering constant refugee movements, distress movements across the border, which then Delhi looks at as a security issue. So even from Delhi's point of view, the SSC is an adverse actor. It is not an actor that India should work with. If India really cares about its interests, then it should walk the talk and mobilize all assets to make sure that it is part of the new script that's been written in Myanmar. And one immediate way that it can do that is by clearly, I would say publicly, indicating to the SSC and telling the SSC that this conscription law is not acceptable. We need to do everything to make sure there's enough diplomatic pressure from the region on the SSC to withdraw this conscription law immediately, and ideally withdraw from politics forever. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the people of Myanmar, firstly. Secondly, it's not good for the people of the region, or governments in the region for that matter. So we know the West supports this. We know the West has a problem with the conscription law, but I would insist the region needs to be more vocal. The regional powers, Thailand, India, China, ASEAN, need to be more vocal about their dissatisfaction and discontents, which are there, but they need to be vocal about it so that SS is forced to withdraw this, and SS is forced to sort of give back the people's mandate of Myanmar back to the people of Myanmar. So this is all I would say. And once again, it's an honor to be here sharing my remarks, and I really wish you all the best, and I hope for a bright future for Myanmar. Thank you.